Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to Ramadan Reminders by Sapience Institute. When Surah Fussilat was revealed in the Qur'an, this is an early Meccan surah, many things were happening in Mecca. You had, of course, your onslaught against the Prophet and his companions. You had some who had embraced Islam, like Hamza, Prophet's uncle, had embraced Islam. Umar had not embraced Islam as yet. But the campaign of slander and attacks and caricaturing of the Prophet's character was all there. And they would use insulting words and characterization of the Prophet in negative terms to dispel people, to prevent people from hearing his message. And Allah says in ayah 26 of that Surah Fussilat, revealed in Mecca, وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَا تَسْمَعُوا لِهَذَا الْقُرْآنِ وَالْغَوْا فِيهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَغْلِبُونَ. Allah says that disbelievers, they say, don't hear this Qur'an, don't listen to this Qur'an, and drown out the Qur'an, so perhaps you would prevail if you do that. So they say, don't hear this Qur'an, don't listen to the words of the Qur'an, and drown out the words of the Qur'an, and in doing so, perhaps you will therefore prevail if you do that. And they began to do that. And they were doing that. So whenever Qur'an was recited, they'd beat their drums and they kind of create a circus and commotion and chaos around the ayat of Allah to prevent people from hearing the call of Allah. And there are many ways people today do the same thing. To prevent people from hearing Allah's call, they make these spectacles and they post their videos on YouTube and other things of burning the Qur'an, for example, Qur'an banners. And they do bad things with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All this to create a spectacle, a scene. In the denial, they create a spectacle. Flamboyant display, flamboyant denial. And this happens, of course, in the Prophet's time, and it happens today as well. So we should always remember that. Remember that whatever Allah mentions in the Qur'an is going to happen. There's a way the Prophet, in fact, dealt with these things in his own time, in carrying on, persisting, patience, persevering, showing courage and bravery, and all of these things as a way of teaching the people that whatever they're doing, all of the noise is just emptiness, it's nothingness, it's worthless. But whatever would remain, like Allah says in Surah Ra'd in the Qur'an, فَأَمَّا الزَّبَدُ فَيَذْهَبُ جُفَاءً. Whatever is just zabad, whatever is just smoke and emptiness and filth, like the froth of the sea, will vanish from you. وَأَمَّا مَا يَنْفَعُ النَّاسِ فَيَمْكُثْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Whatever benefits the people remains on the earth. Focus on the tangible, on the thing that will benefit you in life. Focus on that thing. He was reminding them, the Qur'an is here to stay, and the Quranic message is here to stay. Focus on that. Forget the noise, forget the circus, forget the clamor. All of that is nonsense, and it will pass in time. Don't worry about that. Move on from that. And as these things are happening, the voices sometimes, in fact, change. Those same detractors end up embracing Islam, even until today. You find detractors, antagonists who find the truth of Allah later on in life, perhaps. Look at the example of Balbir Singh. Balbir Singh, an amazing person who became Muhammad Amr. He was one of the architects of destroying the Babri Masjid in the 1990s in India. In fact, he was a chief architect. He was committed to serving the cause of what he believed his gods were telling him to do, and therefore destroyed that mosque. Later on, he became Muslim, Muhammad Amr, and made this vow that I would build 100 mosques to pay up for that, even though Allah forgave his sins when he embraced Islam. But he had this sense of, I got to pay the crime for that, even though Allah forgave his sins. But therefore, he builds his 100 mosques to pay as an amazing act of doing something to offset what he did before. He died last year, Allah have mercy on his soul. Amazing example, Balbir Singh. Or far-right individuals today who were involved in Quran burning before, and today, of course, their story is something different. It's amazing advice about creating your own narrative around a situation. When the Prophet ﷺ was in Medina and you had the Battle of Uhud, there was a point where Abu Sufyan was from the enemies at that time, was in a position of ascendancy. He took a high position and he made this proclamation and he says, Afikum Muhammadan, is Muhammad with you? And the Prophet says to his companions, La tujibu, don't answer him, don't answer him. Then he says, Afikum Ibn Qahafa, is Abu Bakr with you? And the Prophet says, La tujibu, don't answer him. And then he says, Afikum Ibn Khattab, is Umar with you? And the Prophet said, La tujibuhu. Then Abu Sufyan said, U'lu Hubal, how glorious is the God they worship, Hubal. And the Prophet said, Ajibuhu, now answer him. They said, what do we say, O Messenger of Allah? He said, say, Allahu A'la wa Ajal, Allah is higher and more glorious than that. Abu Sufyan said, Lana al-Uzza la Uzza lakum, we have Uzza, our God, and you have no Uzza. And the Prophet said, Ajibuhu, now answer him. So what should we say, Ya Rasulullah? He said, say, Allahumma mawlana la mawla lakum, Allah is our mawla, our support, our aid, our sister. You have no aid and support and sister in life. The point is, the narrative is yours. Create your own narrative. May Allah allow us to take wisdom and insights from all these verses from His blessed book, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma ameen.